What is Gardevoir really? Sure, you may know it to be one of the most popular Pokemon in the games, TCG, and the internet, but what is it exactly? Is there any merit in it being so sexualized, and why is it so important that characters like Wally and Diantha get to use it as their aces? Especially Diantha, as she's the Gen 6 champion. Most people chalk up Gardevoir to just be a very beautiful and elegant humanoid Pokemon that was potentially made to be waifu bait in the subtlest but most obvious way possible. And that's the reason why it was always being highlighted, but that's not the reason as to why it's getting so much representation. In fact, though there is lore and origins to prove that Gardevoir can actually interbreed and have kids with humans, which is something I'll be going over much later in the video, in all of Gardevoir's Gen 3 depictions, this thing doesn't come off as internet gooner bait at all. As a kid, I do remember thinking that this Pokemon was super feminine, of course, but never did I think anything past that. And even as I look at things as an adult, it's clear that, at least in Gen 3, it was only fans of the series that sexualized Gardevoir in many different ways. But officially, there was nothing really there. It wasn't made to look sexual, but it was made to look elegant and beautiful. But why? A Pokemon like Lopunny is made to look the way it does because it's based off a Playboy bunny. So surely Gardevoir must have its reasons too. It doesn't look this way simply because someone wanted it to. There's lore and origins surrounding its appearance. Well, you may not know it, but Gardevoir actually has multiple origins outside the human race. In fact, it probably doesn't have any direct origins to the human race at all, but it does have origins from something very similar to us. Elves! Happy holidays! Elves are very commonly depicted as magical human beings with pointy ears, but what they really are differs based on the tradition or folklore you hear it from. Elves are almost always present in all fantasy RPG games or fantasy stories, and those forms of media, yeah, they're just paler looking humans with pointy ears and magical powers, and sometimes with good archery. But originally, elves never even had pointy ears. This was a trope that was invented in the 1800s. Traditionally, elves have had a humanoid look, just more ethereal, slender, and graceful. They had very distinct characteristics of being very tall and slim, absolutely glowing and dreamy, and sometimes even accompanied by a long white dress, all of which lines up pretty accurately with Gardevoir. Don't believe me? Well, let's check the oldest recorded depiction of them from Germanic mythology. Here, elves are ancient Northern European nature spirits. Beautiful, powerful, emotional, that can either help or harm humans severely. They're otherworldly beings associated with light, fertility, dreams, meadows, health, and the supernatural. Elves existed between worlds and influenced the lives of humans through emotion, magic, and spiritual energy, all of which heavily applies to Gardevoir straight from Gen 3. Gardevoir is adorned in a white dress. Its whole body is primarily this heavenly white color that gives off the sense of light. It being beautiful is a given, but its power and emotion are tied together. Gardevoir is the embraced Pokemon, while its pre-evolutions Ralts and Kirlia are the feeling and emotion Pokemon respectively. Their whole theme from the start of their evolutionary line has been about emotions, and all of Gardevoir's dex entries show to what extreme this goes. Gardevoir is a Pokemon that cares so much about its trainer that it's willing to create a small black hole in order to protect it, or even give up its own life. And somehow, in this situation, giving up one's own life is the less crazy option. Because what do you mean this thing can just open up a black hole whenever it wants? So it can be very helpful, but it can also be very harmful and destructive. It just depends on whether you're Gardevoir's friend or foe. But the dex does make it clear that its power scales in accordance with its emotion of love and sacrifice. It also has the ability to see and read the future, and of course, it has tremendous amounts of psychic power through its psychic typing, which is linked to everything spiritual and magical about elves here. The stuff about meadows may not apply, and fertility, well, we'll get to that later. But outside of that, the only thing that we're missing here is the stuff on dreams and spirits, which Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team along with its remake covers. But you know what's not covered here? Generation 2. One of the most graphically charming generations of all time, because somehow the Gen 2 Pokemon games hold up well to this day, especially visually. Well, if you are missing some Gen 2 love, then you gotta check out the sponsor of today's video, Dokemon Quest. Dokemon Quest, or Doki Monsters Quest if you're playing on Nintendo Switch, is a retro-inspired monster taming RPG, similar to the style of the second generation of Pokemon, but packed with content. You get a 15 to 20 hour main story, a full alternate region post story, 144 monsters to collect, plus shinies and shadow variants. And for those who love long-term series, there's already a sequel in development, expected within the next 2 years. If you're on Switch, the game normally costs $12.99, but right now it's discounted just $2.99 until December 19th. That's a complete steal, and it runs without major issues on both Switch models. PC players can grab it on Steam for $14.99, and that version goes on sale all the time. The Steam build also gets more frequent updates, so if you want to play the latest patches and features first, that's the version to pick up. One of the coolest things about Dokemon Quest is how it was made. The game was built using Mon Tamer Maker, a brand new engine created specifically for beginners and indie teams who want to make monster taming games. Think of it like RPG Maker, but purpose built for this genre. So if you're looking for a charming, nostalgic monster taming adventure with a ton of content and a tiny price tag right now, check out Dokemon Quest or Dokemonster's Quest on Switch. Thanks again to Dokemon Quest for sponsoring today's video. Going back to the first mystery dungeon, in this game, Gardevoir was literally the agent of spirits. She literally exists between worlds, as the elves in Germanic mythology are said to. Anyways, Gardevoir watched over the spirits and spoke to the player character via dreams, and when the player character's role in the game was over, feeling the emotion of the player and their partner, she's the one who made the final call in keeping the player character back in the Pokemon world. And of course, as we all know, the only reason that she became the agent of spirits here is because she decided to protect her previous trainer from the Ninetales curse. Once again emphasizing on the theme of love and sacrifice for its trainer, just like a guardian angel of some sort. Am I saying elves are the only connections to Gardevoir here? No, of course not. There's a whole lot more to talk about actually, but elves are the primary ones, and also the ones that no one seems to talk about. And it's this connection that explains why Diantha has it as her ace Pokemon in X and Y. Remember how I said that the oldest depiction of elves was from Germanic mythology? Well, do you know what that is? Because I sure didn't until making this video. Germanic mythology, or the Germanic people, aren't just the ancestors of some people from modern-day Germany. Rather, they're a huge family of related tribes originating in Scandinavia and Northern Europe around 1000 to 500 BCE. That's the era before Jesus or Christianity. They spread across Europe and shaped early European myth, including the Icelanders, Norwegians, Goths, not the modern kind but the ancient kind, the Vandals, the Dutch, the Norse, and a whole bunch more. Wait, did I just say Norse? That's right. This is mythology and lore that predates the mythology that Gen 6, that Pokemon X and Y were based off of. Norse mythology is actually a derivative or branch of Germanic mythology. And within Norse mythology, there's the Losselfar and Doklafar, two names that I absolutely butchered, but essentially, they're Light Elves and Dark Elves. Gardevoir is very clearly based on the Light Elves from Norse mythology, but you'd be surprised to know that it's also based on the Dark Elves as well. The Light Elves in Norse mythology are known to be brighter than the sun, fairer than any human, benevolent, radiant, and pure. But also in terms of physical appearances, they're known to have long, elegant arms, soft gestures, dancer-like poses. Does this all remind you of anyone? Light Elves are also often depicted as beings that hover or float above the ground. They're also known for standing impossibly gracefully. This, alongside all of the previous generic elf traits that I mentioned previously in the video, and you have yourself a 100% match to Gardevoir here. You want an even crazier match? Gardevoir is obviously a very feminine Pokemon, but as we all know, Gardevoir can be both male or female, which is quite strange. Crazy thing to say in 2025, I know, but I know I'm not the only one who questioned it because they actually make a mention of this in the trophy data in both Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Smash 4. And the reason for this is simple. Light Elves were also depicted as being very feminine, and while they all looked like females, they were actually male and female Light Elves. Technically, the gender of Light Elves is never specified, but there's evidence to prove that both sexes were there, with the Old Norse word for elf being masculine in nature, and that no text ever mentioned the Light Elves being female only, which is something they would have done if that was the case. So that explains why Guardy adds it both ways. Of course, we did get Gallade afterwards, which maybe I need to make a video on him at some point, which comment, like, and subscribe if you want to see more of these lore videos, and not just my internet shipping bait videos, because I really like talking about this stuff. But for now, we at least know that the connection to the Norse Light Elves and Gardevoir is essentially a 100% match. Now, though Gardevoir was introduced in the Gen 3 games, which are based in Japan, that doesn't mean that its origins have to be solely Japanese. It does have some Japanese origins, but its main origins are Norse. We see this a lot with the first 4 generations of Pokemon. Though they were all based on Japanese regions, a lot of Pokemon had more international concepts and origins. We mentioned this already with Lopunny and it being a Playboy bunny, but even as early as Gen 1, Pokemon like Coughing and Wheezing were based off the pollution in New York and LA respectively. So this doesn't discredit Gardevoir's origins in any way. It's probably because Gardevoir was, what I think, the oldest Norse-inspired Pokemon, which was the main reason as to why it got to be Diantha's ace Pokemon. Not only does Gardevoir's elegance and power match Diantha, an actress and champion, so well, but it being Norse in roots actually ties into the roots of the game and lore perfectly. This again is something I never realized until making this video. The word elf also meant white being in Germanic languages, but jumping forward, by the end of the medieval period, the word elf was basically replaced by the French word fairy. You see where I'm going with this? Not only is the word fairy French in origin, making Gen 6 the best time to debut the typing, but Gardevoir's origins of being an elf actually justifies its fairy typing, because fairies and elves basically became synonymous because of the French. This is because elves and fairies had many overlapping traits: radiant, nature spirits, beautiful yet powerful, helpful but dangerous. You've heard me say it by now. And so, even though elves came from Germanic culture and fairies came from Celtic culture, the two overlap so heavily that the medieval people just treated them like they were the same type of being, which somehow led to Gardevoir's existence. And all of this fairy talk, once again, totally justifies Diantha's use of Gardevoir as her ace. Just like it's shiny. Remember how I said Gardevoir is not just based on the light elves, but based on the dark elves as well? Well, you may not see that representation in Gardevoir per se, but when we take a look at shiny Gardevoir, it's as clear as can be. The reason why there's no dark elf counterpart to Gardevoir is because its shiny form is the dark elf counterpart. Again, dark elves aren't evil or anything. Whereas light elves are said to live in Alfheim, one of the 9 realms in Norse mythology, a realm that's of shining beauty, peace, brightness, and open fields. Dark elves are said to live in Svartalfheim? I can't pronounce this one, I'm so sorry. It's basically underground beneath the earth in the lower realms where light cannot touch them. They also live in other places too, I believe, but wherever they live, it's underground, a subterranean habitat. Again, from what I can see, dark elves initially weren't evil or anything. Maybe over time they gained this rep after the medieval times and post-Christianity, but originally they had no association. They did have associations again to themes like death and the underworld, but nothing to make them inherently evil. But ain't that crazy? Light elves represent fertility, which can be associated to life, and dark elves represent death, and Gardevoir embodies both of them, which Xerneas and Yveltal, the box legendaries of Kalos, also both represent. Oh my god, the Diantha champion stocks are really climbing high with this video, man. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. While we've yet to talk about Mega Gardevoir in any way, I think shiny Mega Gardevoir embodies this aspect of death the best. As many people agreed that in its shiny form, its dress looks very much like a funeral dress, whereas regular Mega Gardevoir looks like it's gonna go to the ball, and that's probably because it is. Partly. It definitely is a dancer amongst other things, but for us to see the rest of its roots and origins, we need to take a step back and look at all the origins of the entire evolutionary line, because Ralts, Kirlia, and Gardevoir, and even Mega Gardevoir, tell a story. And this story also relates directly to Wally. Ralts may look simple, but its entire existence is built around the concept of empathy. It has that classic shy character design with its hair covering its eyes, which is something that you see in all kinds of media whenever a character is meant to be quiet, timid, or emotionally sensitive. When you first meet Wally, he's exactly the same way. His shy voice breaks when he speaks, but you can tell that he's an empathetic kid. So they were perfect partners from the get-go. Ralts' little red horns aren't really horns at all. They are literally shaped like two halves of a heart. While Ralts does have eyes, it doesn't really see the world through eyesight. It sees through emotional signals. Even the way its lower half flares out like a miniature dress makes it feel more like a tiny spirit than a physical creature. Meadow elves in Germanic folklore were also described as youthful, delicate, and emotionally reactive beings, and this is exactly the direction that Ralts is designed around. It's a young emotional spirit, just like the elves in those stories. When Ralts evolves into Kirlia, everything shifts to expression. Kirlia looks like a young ballet dancer. It has a built-in tutu made of white frills, it stands on point like a dancer in green tights, its horns move to the side of its head like barrettes or scrunchies, its whole posture tells you exactly what it is. A creature that channels emotion through dance. By the time you meet Wally in the middle of the game, he may not own Kirlia, but he's very close to getting Ralts to evolve into one. And he as a person is a lot more expressive as well, very eager to explore the world and take on gyms, so Wally very much evolves alongside his partner Pokemon. For Kirlia, this is also where some Scandinavian Alvor influence kicks in. Scandinavian Alvor are, you guessed it, fairies or elves. Fairies or elves that were said to dance over the meadows wearing flowers and flowing garments while using their dances to enchant or influence human emotions. That's literally Kirlia. Its dex entry says that when Kirlia feels joy, it literally dances, and that dance amplifies its psychic power. It's a perfect match for Meadow Elves and Alvor dancers. You can almost place Kirlia into one of those old Swedish paintings of elf maidens dancing at dawn, and it wouldn't look out of place at all. Then we reach Gardevoir, and this is where everything in the line matures. A guardian angel and possibly even inspired by one. Gardevoir is based on the principal ballet dancer, but also on a knight. Gardevoir still carries the elegance of a dancer or performer, and it has a massive flowing gown. It stands with perfect posture, it moves like a spirit, but if you look at the details, you'll see the medieval knight influence. Its bob cut resembles our Bermuda helmet, the spikes near its face resemble a masquerade mask, and the red plate on its chest pierces the heart region, symbolizing a direct connection to its emotional core. The confidence that Gardevoir displays is a complete contrast to its first evolutionary stage, Ralts, which again is the same contrast that Wally displays because once again you face him at Victory Road, and whether he has Glade or Gardevoir, he's not the same kid. He's matured just like his Pokemon. And finally, all of these inspirations culminate in Mega Gardevoir. While Wally doesn't own Mega Gardevoir takes everything that came before and turns the dial all the way up. The gown becomes even larger like a ballroom dancer stepping onto the stage of an opera house. Its posture becomes even more regal, its design becomes even more spirit-like with cloak-shaped extensions that resemble the robes of an elven mage. An upgrade of sorts to the elves that we've been talking about all this while. The red heart core becomes a clear focal point of the design, as if it's a magical artifact that fuels all of its power. In other words, Mega Gardevoir is the final and complete form of everything that the line has been building towards, all converged into one design. I know it may be a bit hard to see the medieval or knight inspirations behind Gardevoir and Mega Gardevoir, but the evolution from Kirlia to Gardevoir is literally the moment it goes from being an expressive dancer to a sworn protector. And the medieval tie, as we mentioned previously, has loads of layers because of how elves and fairies were basically made into one by the French during the medieval period. Gardevoir anyways having all these medieval elements in his design in Gen 3, and the French being one of the most dominant cultures during the medieval era. Its Japanese name is literally Sergi, for crying out loud, man, and these medieval connections literally gives Diantha all the more reason to use Mega Gardevoir. Man, what a crazy and layered choice for an ace Pokemon. My whole freaking perception of this choice has changed. And fun fact, between these three, Ralts, Kirlia, and Gardevoir, Gardevoir is the only one to have its Japanese name changed in English. My assumption is because the localization probably thought it was weird to have such a feminine Pokemon be called Sir and Knight, a name that they could have given to Gallade to be honest, but in English and other languages, the name Gardevoir takes that same idea and gives it a more elegant feminine twist. It comes from the French words garde and devoir meaning duty, and even a hint at voir to see for its psychic abilities. So Gardevoir literally means something like guardian of duty or watchful protector, which is a perfect name for it. Real quick, while we're on the topic of names, let's quickly touch on Kirlia and Ralts. Kirlia's name is derived from the Kirlian photography, which is a type of photography that supposedly reveals aura from psychic energy around living things. That ties directly to Kirlia's psychic abilities and its emotional dance theme. In Ralts, its name might be a partial anagram of the word astral, reflecting its psychic otherworldly nature. But fun fact, while you may think that Ralts has nothing to do with dance unlike the rest of its line, Ralts might also have a bit of the word waltz hidden in there, hinting at the dancing theme that fully emerges as it evolves. So we've gone over everything we possibly could have gone over except for the two biggest questions here. Why is Gardevoir so sexualized, and can it really have kids with humans, or was I just baiting you from the beginning? After all this lore dump, I'd be offended if you thought it was bait. Gardevoir is sexualized not because Game Freak intended it, but because it accidentally embodies one of the strongest mythological archetypes in Western storytelling, the beautiful fairy maiden. This figure dominated medieval romances, Victorian art, and centuries of folklore. Gardevoir's design mirrors that template almost perfectly. From the flowing gown and the ethereal posture to the emotional devotion that it shows its trainer, people are not reacting to a Pokemon. They're reacting to thousands of years of fairy maiden symbolism baked into its design. The other major factor is how human Gardevoir feels. It has expressive eyes, dancer-like poses, soft hand gestures, and a clearly feminine posture, traits most Pokemon do not share. This kind of humanoid movement triggers automatic anthropomorphism, meaning people subconsciously treat it like a human character rather than as an animal. Mega Gardevoir pushes this even further with its ballroom gown and bridal imagery. Once you combine elegance, emotional devotion, and human-like expression with centuries of romanticized fairy lore, the internet does what the internet always does. It projects. The sexualization comes entirely from fans, not the design's intent. But with everything we know now about elves, there is a very real reason people wonder whether Gardevoir could have children with humans or not, at least in theory. The Light Elves were not monsters or creatures. They were depicted as an entire parallel race of people. They looked human, they acted human, and most importantly, the surviving sagas of these myths show multiple cases where elves and humans had children together. These children were said to be extraordinarily beautiful, gifted, emotionally sensitive, and spiritually powerful. When you compare that to Gardevoir's design and lore, which draws directly from these elven archetypes, you can see why the idea even comes up. The Pokemon is literally built from the same mythological template. And the funny thing is, the games unintentionally reinforce this connection through mechanics. Gardevoir belongs to the human-like egg group, which is a classification given to Pokemon that have human-like posture, intelligence, or anatomy. This group includes Pokemon such as Machamp, Lucario, and many others, none of which that are actually human, but all of which the game treats as biologically compatible with each other within the Pokemon breeding logic. This was never intended as a lore statement about humans, it's purely a gameplay system. But when fans see a Pokemon based on a mythological race known for having children with humans, and seeing that it's categorized in the human-coded egg group, the idea becomes even more tempting for speculation. But the crazy thing is, it may not even be speculation. You see, from the days of Sinnoh, it was hinted that people and Pokemon in the Pokemon world had gotten together and had kids together. There was once even a time where there is no difference between people and Pokemon. This is the most we've gotten of this lore up until Legends Arceus, where we have a documented case in more recent times of a Pokemon having actual human children with another human. This Pokemon was Frostlass. I made a whole video about it back then, and I may even make another lore video about it similar to this one, if the demand in the comments is strong enough for it, of course. But this completely changed things. What we once thought was a simple myth actually turned out to be fact. And then, of course, through various other means, we heard of Pokemon like Typhlosion having similar stories as well. And honestly, even without these stories, it's clear that this myth was never just a myth. There are various people and characters in Pokemon around with what we would consider to be supernatural powers. Powers that the common person may not have, but it's still not rare enough where these people are considered anomalies. Many of these characters are psychic type trainers. Trainers who utilize psychic powers to bend spoons, throw their Pokeballs, or use their aura abilities. Powers that are very closely associated to psychic type Pokemon. And if Pokemon like Frostlass and Typhlosion are having stories of them having children with other humans, then what about Pokemon? Psychic type Pokemon that are in the human egg group. These Pokemon that have very close association to humans who have the potential to give birth to these people with unique abilities. Pokemon like Alakazam, Mr. Mime, Jinx, Medicham, Gothitelle, and of course, Gardevoir. Well, I'll let you be the one to decide that.